This is the Barbados Today morning news for Friday, October 25th. Thank you for joining us. I am Marie-Claire Williams. Our top story this morning, government will go to Parliament next week to seek approval for the deal reached with external creditors. The agreement was announced last Friday, nearly a year and a half after government announced an immediate suspension of debt payments in an effort to restructure the country's debt of 157% of the gross domestic product. Addressing a post-cabinet press briefing, Minister in the Ministry of Finance Ryan Strawn also gave more details about the agreement.
These talks that took place with the external creditors in terms of the committee, the external credit committee and comprised of Eden Vance, the Guyana Bank for Trade and Industry, teachers, Greylock, as well as other members of the steering committee. Their advisors were no state partners. As you are aware, the former governor of the Central Bank was also an advisor to the external credit committee, and the legal advisors were Arnold and Porter. We have engaged in these discussions as we did on the domestic side, and we have exchanged information with respect to all of the data from government, as would be required as you would under these circumstances.
Strawn added that the deal also makes provisions for a suspension of payments in the event of a natural disaster.
As was the case on the domestic debt restructuring, we have included and agreed that we will have the adverse weather clause, the natural disaster clause, which will suspend debt for 2 years in the event of a natural disaster in Barbados. And in the context of what's happening with climate change, a lot of the discussions that took place at the annual meetings of the IMF and the World Bank centered around how vulnerable countries like Barbados, even though we don't qualify for concessional financing, that our vulnerability to climate change required that we take some efforts in advance in order to build resilience within our own space. And so therefore the External Credit Committee, having recognized that, we want to thank them for their participation in agreeing, as was the case on the domestic side, that in the event that there is a natural disaster in Barbados, that we'll be able to suspend those debt payments for 2 years, which will allow the country to be able to recover that much faster than you would ordinarily do. Having done that restructuring, we are the only country in the world that has an adverse weather clause for both domestic issued debt as well as foreign issued debt.
Attorney General Dale Marshall is making it clear that no member of the current government is linked to drug lords. He was responding to statements from opposition leader Joseph Atherley in Parliament this week that politicians are involved with drug lords. Marshall said since taking up office last year, government has been strengthening its effort to combat criminal activity.
We've also strengthened the hands of the DPP office by ensuring that they're provided with additional prosecutors. There is nothing at all that this administration has done that could even remotely suggest that we are not being tough on crime. The tactic of the leader of the opposition is to suggest to the people of Barbados that we are not. That is far from the case, and I reiterate, members of the press, that there is no one in this current administration who is in any way allied to these drug lords. The leader of the opposition feels that he has to sing or preach to a particular choir. This is not it.
Police are concerned that legitimately obtained ammunition could end up in the hands of criminals. Deputy Commissioner of Police Erwin Boyce told Barbados Today the force is also concerned about the management of lawfully acquired ammunition. He was speaking against the backdrop of 3 high-profile marksmen who faced the law courts over the past 2 years for illegal possession of large quantities of ammunition. Boyce said, however, that the lawmen had no proof that these individuals were guilty of providing criminals with ammunition. The 3 are all members of the Barbados Rifle and Pistol Federation. President of the Federation, Antonio Boo Rudder, has defended the organization's integrity, and he maintains that the Federation has put in place all the best practices necessary to discourage members from breaking the law. CARICOM countries are being advised to tackle risks associated with the offshore sector as one unit. The advice comes from President of the Caribbean Development Bank, Dr. Warren Smith, in his address to the annual conference of the Barbados International Business Association. He pointed to the agreement reached at the intersessional meeting of CARICOM heads on a community strategy to address blacklisting earlier this year. But he said while it targets immediate advocacy action, more needs to be done.
There are a number of lessons from the successes of other offshore financial sectors that have maintained relatively strong competitive positions despite facing similar threats. For example, the BVI has a robust and flexible regulatory framework reinforced by highly competent professionals. Its legal system, which includes a commercial court and strong insolvency legislation, is also geared towards supporting the BVI's specific niches. Like BVI, Barbados needs to craft a comprehensive strategy based on the identification and exploitation of niche areas. An improved business ecosystem is as essential for the growth of the international business and financial services sector as it is for the rest of the economy.
The Children's Play Park at the Farley Hill National Park has a fresh new look thanks to the Princess Trust International's team program. 12 young people raised funds to purchase paint and other supplies, while the National Conservation Commission's team at the park gave them the necessary equipment and supervision. The program is being administered by the Royal Barbados Police Force, and Program Coordinator Inspector Roland Cobbler highlighted the importance of such projects for young people.
The significance of this program is based on the fact that the target population are those young persons between the ages of 16 to 25 whose statistics have shown are more likely to become involved in violence or criminal behavior during this period of their life. In modern-day society, where the youth are faced with a variety of negative influences, it is imperative that programs be implemented which provides them with the opportunity to positively contribute to the development of communities and, by extension, enhance their capabilities. The Princess Trust International Team Program, therefore, has the potential in making a difference in the life of young people based on the outcomes of the program, which are designed to achieve specific goals.
There's regional and international news after this short break.
It's Festive Friday at the Bridgetown Night Market at Pelican Craft Center. Kick off the weekend this Friday from 4 p.m. to midnight with loads of food, drinks, and entertainment. Get ready for Crop Over with the Rhythm Roots Street Parade. Party like it's Kadooman Day on the street around Pelican Village with costume reveler, music, and more. It's Festive Friday. It's Festive Friday at the Bridgetown Night Market at Pelican Village Center from 4 p.m. to midnight. Admission free.
Thank you for staying with us. We're back with news from the region. Guyana's opposition leader, Barrett Jagdeo, has called on the chairman of the Guyana Elections Commission, GECOM, to set up an independent oversight committee at the commission's headquarters. Jagdeo says this will ensure the integrity of the electoral system ahead of the March 2nd regional and general election.
What I believe is that she has to understand that this is not the court. When you're a judge and you make a decision, you expect people to your staff to faithfully carry out the decision or a ruling. That in GECOM, it has become almost like a political machinery, and that people who come and chat with you, they may have ulterior motives. And therefore, You have to get into the technical details of what is being discussed and also stay on top of what is being issued by GCOM to see that it faithfully represents the views of the organization and not individuals. So those press releases that we had that were erroneous, misleading, etc., she has to have oversight over all of these things.
And further afield, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has called for a general election on December 12 to break Britain's Brexit impasse. He has also conceded for the first time he will not meet his deadline to leave the European Union next week. We get more in this Reuters report.
Frustrated by the deadlock around his Brexit efforts, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson on Thursday said he will ask Parliament to approve a general election to take place on December 12th. A move that would effectively put the issue to voters. UK lawmakers just this week approved Johnson's recently negotiated Brexit plan, but not his timetable. Johnson wanted the deal done by October 31st, but Parliament insisted on more time to study the details. Johnson then reluctantly asked the European Union for an extension to January 31st. Conceding for the first time that he will not meet his do-or-die deadline to leave the EU by next week, Johnson, in a televised interview Thursday, explained why he thinks a general election is likely the only way to finally get a Brexit deal done.
I think what people will want to know is that if there is that extra time, then this time Parliament really means it and really will get behind the deal and really will put it through. And in order to create a deadline that is credible in everybody's minds, then there must be that hard stop of a general election.
But Johnson has twice failed before to win the votes in Parliament for a snap election, where he needs the support of 2/3 of its 650 lawmakers.
That's news, but for the very latest, you can visit our website at www.barbadostoday.bb. You can also subscribe to our e-paper, email updates, and like us on Facebook, and sign up for our breaking news alerts via WhatsApp. We're also on Izumi Media in bus terminals and Screenplay at supermarkets and gas stations near you. You can also find us on Mix 96.9 FM and Capital Media HD 99.3 FM. I am Marie Claire Williams. Good morning.